Hello, everybody. My name is Kelsey Winter, and the book I read that I will review for you today is titled Global Weirdness, and it was written in 2012 by an organization called Climate Central. So, a little bit of background on Climate Central. It's an organization that researches and reports facts about the changing climate and the impact it has on the American public. Per their website, they say that they wish to research and provide scientific facts by working with the leaders in their specific field, communicating their findings in a way that they would reach a wide variety of audiences while still remaining nonpartisan. So the general public has been really confused about the topic of climate change. They don't really know what to believe or who to believe, and Climate Central wanted to clear that up by writing this book. So the aim is to lay out the essential information in a simple way that's easy for all members of the general public to understand. And all of the chapters have been reviewed by Climate Central scientists and outside scientists who have knowledge in the field to ensure accuracy. So the book is split up into 4 main sections. The titles are What the Science Says, What's Actually Happening, What's Likely to Happen in the Future, and Can We Avoid the Risks of Climate Change? And each chapter within the different sections of the book begins with a catchy title that tells you what topic is going to be discussed in that specific chapter. The science presented throughout the book ranges from before the dinosaurs to current day. So first, we learn a little bit about how normal climate was different in the time before the dinosaurs than it is now, and the Earth was covered with glaciers. Then the climate swung back and forth between glacial periods and interglacial periods, which is much like what we're experiencing now. The length of these periods were said to be tens of thousands of years, but they varied. So the summary would be that normal climate meant very different things throughout the course of the planet's history, and the changes that have occurred in the past have been natural because people haven't always been emitting greenhouse gases like they are now. So this book was written for the general public. It was meant to be written at a level that if someone in 6th grade were to pick up the book and read it, they'd be able to read it with ease and get all the basic information that they need to know what global warming is and understand how we're contributing. So to go along with that, something that worked really well in the book was their approach to vocabulary. So since the global warming is a scientific topic, there are big words that need to be discussed in order to gain understanding. But they approached it in a way where they were able to introduce the word and give enough background information so that the reader is not confused. So an example that worked well for me was when they introduced the word proxies. So it goes through the definition of what proxies are, that they're the natural records that you can that provide measurements of how the Earth was a very long time ago. So they test bubbles in ice. They've done it in Antarctica and Greenland, and they also check bits of plant particles and materials to see how wet or dry the land was, as well as shelled organisms that live in the ocean. They've been able to test the shells of that. So they go through what the word means and how it's applied specifically to science in global warming. So I thought that worked really well and made everything a lot easier to understand. What worked in this book for me was that it was really easy to grasp and understand the concepts that they were talking about that were digging deeper into global warming and what we're doing to contribute. And it helped me feel more optimistic that if we do begin to live more consciously, that there is hope for the future of the environment. So when I first started reading it, I enjoyed the way the information was presented and broken up into those different sections with the catchy titles. But towards the end of the book, I was sort of left wanting more. And by this I meant that they sort of end the book leaving it hanging without any definitive answers about what myself or others can do to reduce the emissions, although they talk about a lot of those big-time things that were costing a bunch of money that we could do. But I didn't feel like I personally got a ton of information about what I could do, so that leads me into what didn't work. All of those solutions that they presented that might possibly help us reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we use, they explain them and then they say that they're not a realistic way to solve the problems at all because they would be too expensive. And that conclusion left me feeling really helpless because there's only so much you can do when it comes to the issue of money. And when money is the issue, the issues rarely are overcome. And so at the end of the book, I still felt optimistic because there are things that we can do, and money is, it's hard to overcome when money's involved, but since there are things that we can do, it's just a small battle that we're going to have to get over to make the necessary changes. One of the highlights from this book came from the chapter titled Weather is Not Climate, Climate is Not Weather, except they kind of are. And that was one of the first chapters that really drew me in, and it speaks to the relationship between climate and weather and addresses the similarities and differences. So a quote that really stood out to me reads, "A string of 100-degree days in New York in July doesn't necessarily mean the climate is getting warmer. But if New York keeps getting more record-high temperatures decade after decade and fewer low-record temperatures, that's a hint that the climate might really be changing." So that stood out to me because I think people use the words climate and weather sort of interchangeably, and I did before reading this book. I didn't see what the difference was. So this chapter helped me better understand sort of how you can set the two apart. Another thing that, another highlight that I pulled out from the book is that they talk about how it's really hard to determine how steep the cost is going to be that we're going to be paying in the future if we don't change things now. But they do recommend that investing now is the direction we should be going. Invest now so that we don't have to pay the price later, because there will be a price to pay, although we can't figure out exactly what that price is in a really accurate way. Finally, my conclusion would be that I definitely would recommend this book to anyone and everyone in the general public who has a free couple of hours to read a book. Seems really long, but since it was such a quick read, it doesn't take that long. I actually think it would be really beneficial for high school students to read. I think that it would be great for an environmental science class to read this book. I'm not sure if any actually do use it, but it was really entertaining and I learned a lot, and I definitely recommend it to everybody.